welcome back, and always honored to have with us when we get a chance to sit down with him, Dr. Tim Murphy. And today's subject is constantly got my brain going in so many directions, and it's the subject of mental health. Much bigger than any time that we can give to it, but there's an element within this now that to me is becoming somewhat alarming. So perfect timing for us to have Dr. Tim Murphy back with us. He's a licensed psychologist. He's a clinical director there at Fortis Future, a center for focusing on the care of veterans and military and first responders with PTSD. He was also served in the U.S. House of Representatives from Pennsylvania's 18th Congressional District 8 times. So he spent some long years there in Congress. He's the author of a book that I always say that if you're a leader of any type, especially pastors, you should have this book in your library, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD. It's one of the great counseling guides of our day. Get a copy of it. He does have a website, drtimmurphy.com, and there's the picture of the landing page. Dr. Murphy, always an honor. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you again, Perry.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to frame the first question that will set the conversation, but there seems to be a trend among young people self-diagnosing with mental illness. This is alarming, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on here, and how did mental health become an issue where young people would pick it up and say, I have that problem?
Well, I don't know if you ever took a introductory psychology course in high school or college, but when any of us took it, we probably walked away with every time the professor or the teacher talked about something, we started to say, gee, I have some of those symptoms. I have trouble sleeping. I worry about things. Sometimes I feel down. Sometimes I confuse. And people would jump to conclusions like, well, maybe I am psychotic, bipolar, schizophrenic, way, way out of line. But that's because of the susceptibility of that age range. And they think about things like that. But going forward, when we have TikTok that so many millennials, Gen Zs, and others will turn towards for entertainment, there's also in these brief episodes information that lures people in with some description of symptoms. Feel down, feel sad, feel anxious. And then, of course, people want to find out more. And you know how the artificial intelligence works and the algorithms. Once you spend time looking at something or repeat it or store it, those systems know to deluge you with more and more information. So these 30-second clips now become several minutes, now become hours, now become days of information that influences minds with whatever it is, everything from drink this coffee, have this soup, buy this shoe, get this car, all meant to influence. But when it comes to mental health, it turns out it's a very dangerous thing because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Okay, let's be a little elementary just for a moment. How would you define mental health?
Great question. There's a difference between mental health and mental illness. We all want mental health. It's how we function day to day. It's how we deal with problems and stresses day to day. It's our mind being able to think clearly with problem solving, focusing, paying attention. It's being able to manage stress appropriately. I like to tell people that stress is mandatory, misery is optional. So it also has to do with how we manage our emotions, understanding that we can have a wide range of emotions from intense anger to intense love, from joy and pleasure and all those things. But mental health is being able to handle the world in a way that we feel good and happy and functional. That's the main thing, functional with life stresses. Mental illness is something different, and unfortunately, they're oftentimes used interchangeably, and they are not. So it's like the difference between lung health and lung cancer, that we all want good lung health, we want good physical health, but that's not the same spectrum as cancer. So mental illness is now when the system itself is breaking down. We can no longer think functionally and adaptively, not just for a moment while we're under stress or tired or hungry, but really where our brain is just not functioning well to process or deal with information. And an emotional element, it's when even the emotions become overwhelming for us with anxiety, depression, fear, whatever that might be, where we cannot deal with the world and the reality around us in a functional, adaptive way. So that's an important distinction.
All right. Thank you. Great answer. My concern about young people thinking that they have the capacity to self-diagnose a mental health issue is alarming. But the other side effect to this, to me, that's alarming is it definitely can put their faith into question.
Oh, absolutely. You've probably seen some of these things where, like I get a lot of clicks on social media, a lot of information about Bible passages. I love to read them. I love to read people's interpretations of that. But then I'll also get something from someone who's a self-proclaimed expert in something to do biblically, and it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, what are you talking about? Or they'll start specifically attacking certain pastors or preachers or priests, whatever that is, that they're getting it wrong. And they get into this nasty, vituperative language as if that person with that TikTok message has, the hand of God has tapped them directly to tell them how to do things. It's worrisome. Now, the same thing happens in the mental health realm, where someone just starts making stuff up. Maybe they've had a certain experience, or or maybe they just want more people to click on their TikTok page, and so they'll send things out there, and people unfortunately will believe it. In part because it's what Goebbels said, who was Hitler's propaganda minister. If you tell something to people enough times, eventually they will believe it. And the second principle, that is, if you tell something to someone that seems very outrageous, eventually they may become more susceptible to believe it. So that is some of the psychological mechanisms at work here, and gets a person to question, ultimately get back to your question, to question their faith, because they say, gee, I'm seeing these images and they're great and they're animated and they're colorful and they're peppy and they're perky and it only comes out in a few seconds. Maybe I should worship at the church of TikTok and their messages instead of really do some thoughtful thinking of this.
Because there's a biblical principle here that could be clearly missed, and that is God uses adversity to strengthen us.
Absolutely. Gosh, he says it so much. The vine has to be pruned. That sometimes we know that even scientifically, trees that are kept in an atmosphere like a greenhouse and never have a chance to twist in the wind are not as strong as those who have been through storms. Time after time, listen to that word wind. Time after time, wind is used as an important principle to say, it's God's strength. It could be the wind that parts the Red Sea. It could be the wind that Elijah didn't want to deal with and he hid in the cave. It could be the wind that comes in when the tongues of fire were upon the heads of the apostles. It could be as gentle as a breath, as strong as a hurricane. But those things strengthen us. And didn't the Lord also refer to, if you build on sand, it's going to fall apart. You build on stone, you're stronger. So if people have a tendency, though, I want to find an easy out, an easy answer. But Jesus made it pretty clear to his apostles, hey, guys, life's going to be tough. Can you imagine being in that meeting with Jesus when he sits down with them and says, I got some good news and bad news. The good news is Jesus. The bad news is life is going to really stink sometimes. People are going to torture you and kick you out of town and abuse you and eventually kill you, but you're going to be with me. And that's the message we need to get biblically, that is tough, that our life is temporary, that the afterlife and being with the Lord is infinite. But we go for these quick little pleasure principles and think that this popping this ecclesiastical candy is going to make me happy permanently, and it won't, right?
That's a great term, ecclesiastical candy. I got to remember that one.
I just made that up.
Well, that's a good one. That's a book.
There you go. It's my next book, Ecclesiastical Candy.
It's a book. Well, I guess the other alarming thing about all this, Dr. Murphy, is that young people have the tendency to turn anything into a fad. And if they're going to self-diagnose mental health, as dangerous as that sounds, it could become a fad that could destroy their life.
Exactly. Well, here's an alarming statistic. 87% of millennials and Gen Z turn to TikTok for at least one health question on a regular basis. 87%.
Wow.
Now, what does this mean? That means, just as you said, that symptoms and solutions can become a fad. We saw for a while in the 90s, for example, anorexia and bulimia were the things so many kids had.
Good
We saw
example.
cutting behavior as something that more and more therapists saw in their office. The latest fad that took place in the last 5 years or so has been gender dysphoria. Every kid has it. And of course, now that's been also promoted, unfortunately and tragically, by a lot of teachers and principals and psychologists and counselors who, when somebody walks into their office who may be 5 or 6 years old or 15 years old and say, I don't really feel comfortable with who I am, for a therapist to say, well, maybe you really are a boy or really are a girl. Have you ever considered that? And especially adolescents who are confused about their puberty and budding sexuality, they say, gee, I don't really know. What do I do about this? Those who are peers, those who are in a position of power, may plant those seeds. Those questions can lead to tremendous misinformation. And here's a little example that has nothing to do with this, but have you ever had someone who's talking to you about, how's your retirement funds? Are you really set for retirement? Do you have this or this or this policy? Or the person starts to go, wow, I don't know if I have that. Oh, you don't? Well, that's okay, because some people can live off of Social Security only, but, the fact that you don't have this, I maybe lead you to question. And the next thing you know, the person's saying, well, what do I have in my pensions, my other issues? And people start questioning that, worry about that. Just a little seed planted of a question makes us begin to worry and doubt. And there's certain personality characteristics that are very susceptible to this. One are people who are easily go into conspiracy theories, and I don't mean what Hillary Clinton called the deplorables, but you can have people on the left and the right who are very prone to think everybody's after them in conspiracy, so they'll get into this. Also, people who are generally not well focused on identifying themselves will be easily susceptible to misinformation. Well, you know what? It looks like there we're describing your typical adolescent. They don't really have a well-formed image of themselves yet. Even the most mature and logical person, their brain hasn't even developed until we're about 25. So we are far more susceptible to these things. That's why we have laws that say you can't drive till you're 16. You can't be in the military till you're 17 or 18. You can't vote. You can't get a tattoo or an ear piercing or any of those things, because we recognize the immaturity of a person's ability to make really clearly discernible decisions.
Wow. So powerful. Let me take a break here and say to our viewers and listeners, get a copy of his book. It's just a great resource. It's called The Christ Cure, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD. If you're a leader, you're a pastor, you're a manager, or whatever, this is a great resource. Get a copy of it. It's online. And check out Dr. Murphy's website, drtimmurphy.com. We'll take a quick break and come right back. Okay, welcome back, and an honor to have back with us today, very timely, Dr. Tim Murphy is back with us. He's a licensed psychologist, and he's the clinical director there at Fortis Future, a center for focusing on the care of veterans, military, and first responders with PTSD. He has a website, drtimmurphy.com, and his book is a must in everybody's library if you're a leader of any sort, especially you pastors. The Christ Cure, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD. We're talking about this new thing of young people starting to self-diagnose themselves with mental illness. And I'm wondering, I understand TikTok. I didn't know the numbers that you shared with us, Dr. Murphy. Those are very alarming, how many young people are tuning in and what they're doing there. But our culture seems to figure out a way to successfully sell fear as a motivator to get people to do things and buy things. I've always said that cynicism is kind of like the cancer of the culture, and it certainly is a cancer with people of faith. If you become cynical about everything, it almost could be stage 4 cancer in your soul if you're not careful here.
That's right.
But I'm just wondering if young people are being sold fear, that certainly is going to provoke an issue within them. Am I mentally unstable, right?
Right. Well, let's face it. One of the characteristics of adolescence is we're all mentally unstable because we don't know the world yet.
Right.
We don't have the sophistication of years of experience, and we struggle with that. And that's what all of us have gone through adolescence, and quite frankly, adulthood is that way too. None of us are perfect. It's a particular problem for those who are more narcissistic, and in that sense, less humility, because people with, there's a great advantage, a resilience factor I talk about in my book about humility, that those who are humble are more willing to ask the question of, is that true? How does this affect me? What is the source? Maybe I don't know everything. A person who's more arrogant, a lot of hubris, or more narcissistic will say, I already know it. I'm going to find information that confirms my vast and superior knowledge. By the way, an aside here, I heard someone say this, one of my veterans said this when one of the people in our veterans group was commenting about how the Bible's full of hooey, it's no good, and those stories about Noah and that fish and all those other things. It's not true. And that's how the veteran said, I'm curious, where did you get your vast knowledge of the Bible? Did you get it from reading the Bible or not reading the Bible? And similar things apply here. Where did you get your vast knowledge of mental health and mental illness? By actually studying it or by looking at TikTok and dealing with rumors? So we are more prone to deal with quick information, and somehow we find it uncomfortable to question and really deal with this. But to bring this full loop to your question here too, what inoculates us from this? You're probably familiar with a study done a number of years ago about how often a person attends church or reads and studies the Bible and what effect that has on their life. And we know that it isn't just once a week. It isn't just a couple of times a week, but really 4 times a week of really studying the Word. As well as I believe people should, wake up in the morning and have a prayer of gratitude and end the day with prayers too. But make prayer a fundamental part of your life, and regular worship and gathering at a church inoculate a person so much so that far lower rates of suicide, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorders, lower rates of eating disorders, much lower alcohol abuse, much lower use of pornography, much more likely to engage in mission work, much more likely to engage in talking to other people about the Lord and the Bible. So those factors of having that steady hand at the helm, which is the Word of God, showing us what is the truth of thousands of years of study, helps us. But still, you can tell people that, but they'll say, yeah, but I want the easy answer. And the easy answer is pretty wrong, by the way.
That's good. Young people that, again, dealing with the subject here of self-diagnosing themselves with some kind of mental illness, is that a result of them thinking they're a victim of some sort?
Yeah, very often, yes. I mean, let's face it, youth are themselves guided and led by adults. And kids may think, well, the teacher doesn't understand me, my parents don't understand me, and they may feel that. But there's also a victimology which is being promoted now. Let me say this. Look, I am glad that RFK is there as the Secretary of Health. I think he's going to make a lot of substantial changes, particularly in the area of food and diet. But I'm a little concerned about some of the messages he's sending, that it sounds like he's saying he's going to get the answer to autism by September. I don't think that's going to be possible. We've been studying this for decades. And also, I think over-reliance on saying that it is processed foods and chemicals in foods and food dyes that are causing problems. Certainly, they are a causal factor in obesity, and obesity and poor physical health contributes directly and clearly to anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. But it is not the cause of everything. So people think, well, if I only eat right, remove processed foods and dyes, we're going to eliminate mental illness. And that is not the case, because you still have areas like autism, schizophrenia, psychosis, bipolar disorder that are brain diseases. Now, something important to say to this too, because there are some people who are on the spectrum of autism, or they call themselves neurodiverse. And that's become a catchphrase for some people to think, well, I'm different, so I must be neurodiverse, and so I have a little bit of autism. I may be challenged on this by some people, but I'd say to them, no, you're not. That the normality is a wide spectrum. And just because you may have problems understanding emotions sometimes doesn't mean you're autistic. There is, however, people with severe disorders. In fact, of those who have autism, about 30% or so go on to have psychotic and schizophrenia symptoms. And if we look back on those with schizophrenia, about 40 to 50% of those had autism when they're younger. And this isn't caused by food additives or processed foods. So I worry here if HHS, Health and Human Services Department, is going to start looking upon this as saying, well, if we focus on foods and lifestyle, we're going to eliminate mental illness, and that's not the case. So if people are looking to social media and Dr. Google for answers to this, I'd be very cautious. There are times when, RFK is saying things like, Secretary Kennedy is saying things like, Big Pharma has a stake in this. They want to use medicines, and it is overused. It is indeed overused, overdiagnosed as attention disorder. But the problem with psychosis and schizophrenia is medications are underused. It's too tough to get medications. It's too tough to find someone who's qualified in this. And so we have to be very careful about these diagnoses. Some are very real and need real help, and some are overdiagnosed and given flippant, trivial answers.
That is a great balanced answer. Thank you. It answered a lot of thoughts in my head. See if I can squeeze in two more questions here. Young people also want to be, they want an identity. Mm-hmm. It's just part of that time of life where I'm this or I'm that or I'm one of these or I'm one of those. And I guess, is that leading to the self-diagnosis? I mean, I'm this. I mean, is it a part of wanting to be identified and be recognized?
Brilliant. We're looking for answers to understand ourselves. And so choosing a diagnostic label may be part of that. So a person says, I'm confused with life. Maybe I have a psychological disorder, maybe a mental illness. Well, that's a quick answer, but that's maybe not necessarily true. Let me ask you, Perry, are you ever confused with life? Yes. That's the condition of existence.
It's not even 9 o'clock and I'm confused talking to you.
There you go. Sorry. Let me talk. You want to sit on my couch? We can cover it.
Yeah, there we go. No, I get it. All right, let me take you for a few moments, 30,000 feet up and look. It appears to me, Dr. Murphy, that craziness is hitting a wall in America. I'm trying to be broad brush here, but it looks like America's just had enough of nonsense. Girls being overtaken by boys in their sports, and the list goes on and on and on. We want to return back to, they may not even know this, but they're returning back to a moral order that makes sense. We know that that's biblical. But the point being is, and you being in Congress, there seems now to be an awakening in America of, man, we're down the wrong road here. Something's crazy. All this nonsense isn't working. Or am I just being too optimistic?
Well, it would be great if we could actually awaken to that understanding that it's okay to be normal. And there's a wide range of behaviors that are normal. Sometimes we use prejudice and bigotry in ourselves, say, oh, look at the way that person dresses, or look at their looks, and we judge them quickly and dismiss them. It's never right to bully anyone. It's never right to judge someone. We're never in that position to really judge someone's worth. Everybody is worthwhile, even if they're homeless or in prison or hungry. We're there to serve them. But we are, however, easily looking for ways to dismiss all that. It takes a lot of courage and humility to accept the wide range of normal. But what's happened is our society, we want to call something's crazy and then look for quick fixes. And then with that saying, well, because I have this illness, you have to treat me different. And look, I get that. But what's so different about treating people with respect and kindness? However, if someone says, I want you to call me by my pronouns because I'm a cat, there's a time, too, when the reality of normal says, I'm not going to do that. You call yourself what you want, but I don't have to engage in your self-imposed delusions here, too.
Wow. How would you gauge the mental health of our culture today?
I think our society has a long way to go. It has, I think in the last few months, things are beginning to reset. Some things that President Trump is doing, for example, at the Justice Department, he has the FBI. He wants to identify who are those doctors out there who are doing this trans surgery on children, or puberty blockers, not based on sound science. It has been in the past, excuse me, I'm cold. It has been in the past that psychologists and counselors, we were hunted down if we question those things. People's licenses were at risk. So there's some reset of this to saying maybe you're okay. But I'm concerned about that. I saw a recent study where people who are more liberal tend to identify themselves as having more mental illness.
Yeah.
It could be you're distressed because you're thinking the wrong things.
To that point, in 30 seconds there, isn't some of this just flat malpractice?
I think it is. I mean, I certainly am. I challenge psychologists to say, show me the science behind that, and do not silence my science. We need to have open discussions and debates. But a lot of societies, psychological associations, counseling associations, American Academy of Pediatrics, et cetera, are telling people you cannot discuss this. So what do people do? They're more prone to go towards social media. You know, my issue is things like trauma and serious mental illness. Here's something. At a review of 100 TikTok messages, 52 of them gave wrong information dealing with psychiatry, depression, anxiety, trauma, schizophrenia, bipolar, giving wrong information. And I think that's because people don't trust the big societies anymore.
Yeah.
We have to get back to honest information. And this is where I say clergy need to be informed so you can inform your congregation.
Thank you for your passion. Stay there.
And,
we need you. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out his book, The Christ Cure, 10 Biblical Ways to Heal from Trauma, Tragedy, and PTSD. This in itself is an amazing resource. You can go to his website and stay connected with him, drtimmurphy.com. There's a picture of that landing page. Thank you, friend. We value your time greatly. God bless you. Stay in the fight.
God bless you, too. We'll keep fighting.